It was past midnight when the light turned on by itself. There was no one around, no nurses, no alarms, no movement, just her sitting in the corner of the hospital room, hands resting on her lap, eyelids heavy with exhaustion. The sound of the monitors filled the silence, and the smell of antiseptic had already blended with memories she couldn't stop reliving. And yet, right there in the stillness and the fatigue, a small desk lamp flickered on, faint, steady, and strangely focused. Rebecca slowly opened her eyes wider. The lamp, once thought broken, now cast a warm, gentle glow over one single object, an old Bible, opened on the table. And that light, for reasons she couldn't explain, illuminated only one word. She stood, barefoot on the cold tile floor, her heart suddenly beating louder than it should. Every step toward the table felt deliberate, like time itself had slowed to let her move. The lamp trembled but didn't go out. The Bible was turned to the exact page, as if someone or something had left it open on purpose. And the word she saw glowing was simple: favor. Just that. No highlight, no underlining, but it felt alive. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat. What kind of favor, and why her? This is a story about silent prayers, exhaustion, and a light that revealed more than a word. It revealed a turning point no one could have predicted. If someone you love is waiting for a sign, write their name in the comments. Leave a word of faith. Like and subscribe, not just for this channel, but as a spiritual act, because maybe this story was written for them. But what Rebecca saw that night was only the beginning. The first thing Rebecca noticed when she stepped into the room was the smell. It wasn't strong, just faint enough to be missed, like the room itself was trying to hide the truth that silent battles were being fought here every day. Room 214 had a strange stillness to it, as if time inside moved differently. No rush, no chaos, only the slow rhythm of the heart monitor, the steady drip of far fluid, and the fragile breath of someone who had seen far more than she could say. Rebecca placed her bag on the chair, glanced at the patient chart, and sighed. Another night shift was beginning, her 22nd in a row. No break, no complaint, no visible tears. She'd learned, far too early, that silence wasn't weakness, it was endurance. It was the way people like her, those who kept everything standing, survived. She sat quietly in the corner of the room, near a small table. The lamp above it hadn't worked in weeks, or so she was told. No one had bothered to fix it. No one else used that room overnight but her. Mrs. Eleanor hadn't spoken in days. Before that, barely. Rebecca had gotten used to silence. It wrapped around her like an old blanket, cold but familiar. So when the lamp above the table suddenly flickered to life, she didn't scream. She stared once, then again, and then it stayed on. She looked at the switch. Off. She turned to check the rest of the room. Dark. Only that small lamp glowed. It didn't light up the room, it focused, like a spotlight, direct, intentional. And what it lit up was not the wall, not a file, not a machine. It lit up a book. There, perfectly centered under the light, was an old Bible, open, worn, and untouched. Rebecca rose slowly, as if drawn forward by something she couldn't name. Every step toward the table felt deliberate, like walking through sacred space. Her heart, dulled for months by grief and exhaustion, began to thump with a kind of startled awareness. The light was steady now, warm, quiet, but she could feel its pull. She leaned in. It was a Bible she hadn't seen before. One of those thick, older editions, small print, thin pages, verses running close to the edge. There were handwritten notes in the margins, signs of someone who had cried through its promises long before she arrived. But what caught her eye wasn't a verse or a phrase. It was one word glowing without ink, without highlighter, without explanation. Favor. Rebecca froze. Her breath caught, as if the air had grown heavier. The word shimmered in the light, not in a mystical way, but in a deeply human one. It didn't blink. It didn't float. It simply stood there, breathing into her like a whisper, too quiet for anyone else to hear. She reached out with trembling fingers and brushed the edge of the page. The paper was warm, as if the light had been on for hours, but the cord lamp, it had no power. Favor, she whispered to herself. A word she hadn't prayed in a long time. A word that felt like something too good for her life right now. She looked over at Eleanor. The woman was still, eyes closed, breathing shallow. A woman suspended between here and eternity. Rebecca had cared for her for 6 months. never missed a night shift, not out of duty, not out of compassion, but because she had nowhere else to go. Her mother, barely present in mind, stayed at home under Rebecca's care. Her brother, battling addiction, was now in a treatment facility, and her father gone long ago, taking every trace of softness with him. This hospital room had become her sanctuary, and somehow, that word in the Bible felt like it had been left. For her, she sat again, her gaze fixed on the page. Favor, she whispered it again, almost ashamed. Could it really be meant for her? Was God still handing out favor to people like her, those who weren't saints, weren't pastors, weren't holy, just tired, just broken, just quiet? That's when she heard movement from the bed. Rebecca turned quickly. Eleanor's eyes had opened. The old woman stared at the ceiling first, then turned her gaze slowly toward Rebecca. Her voice, when it came, was weak but sure. "You saw the light." Rebecca didn't answer at first. Was she really awake? But then Eleanor continued, her voice a breathy whisper. "It's the same light I saw when he saved me." Rebecca stepped closer, heart pounding. She took Eleanor's frail hand gently and asked, "What psalm is it?" The woman smiled, just slightly, her lips dry, her hands cold. "You'll know soon, but before that, you need to hear what I heard." And right then at that precise moment something began to shift, not just in the room, but inside Rebecca, and whatever that something was, it had been waiting for years to finally speak. That night, the lamp lit the Bible like it was protecting something sacred, but Rebecca carried much more than the weight of a sleepless shift. She was carrying an entire story, one that no one else could see. She walked the hospital halls unnoticed, filling out charts, adjusting machines, offering water and silence to patients no one visited. But what she held inside was louder than any emergency alert, and it wasn't just exhaustion. It was soul-weariness. She hadn't cried in months, not because she didn't have reasons, but because there was no space left for breaking. Not at home, not at work, not in the in-between. When you're the one holding everything together, you don't get to fall apart. Not publicly, not fully. And yet, that night, when Eleanor opened her eyes and asked about the light, something cracked, not from pain, but from stillness, from something sacred moving in. It wasn't comfort, not yet. It was like someone had finally noticed that she was drowning, but too tired to call for help. Rebecca held Eleanor's hand tighter. The woman who had barely spoken in days was now awake, and alert, like she'd returned from some deeper place just to hand over a message, a verse, a sign. "When I lost my husband," Eleanor said slowly, "I asked God for a sign too. It was just me, alone in a quiet room. That same light appeared, right over my Bible. I opened it and found this psalm. It kept me breathing. It gave me the strength to care for others, even when I couldn't care for myself." Rebecca stared, breath caught in her throat. That wasn't just Eleanor's story, that was hers too. The invisible ones, the silent givers, the ones who loved past the breaking point without asking for anything in return. She looked again at the Bible. The light hadn't dimmed. The words still glowed, favor, as if the pages were alive with intention. She didn't know what the full verse was, didn't know the number or the chapter, but somehow, that one word had cracked open something that had been locked away far too long. She thought of her brother, his hollow eyes the last time they spoke. She thought of her mother, who barely recognized her anymore. And she thought of herself, the version of her that still stood in the mirror each morning, putting on a uniform, masking fatigue, carrying pain like armor. Favor. She almost said it aloud again, but couldn't. It felt too sacred, too undeserved. Could God still offer favor to someone like her? Someone who no longer prayed like she used to? Someone who hadn't opened a Bible in months? Someone who was simply surviving? She leaned her back against the cold hospital wall and slid slowly to the floor. The overhead lights remained off. Only the lamp remained, as if guarding the verse in that open Bible. The silence felt different now, not suffocating, not lonely, just full. A memory came like a whisper. She was 7 years old, running a fever. Her mother, in those clearer days, sat beside her bed with the Bible in her lap. She didn't remember the passage, but she remembered her mother's voice, calm, rhythmic, certain. She remembered the prayer, the hand on her forehead, and her mother's words, "You're going to be okay, sweetheart. God hears you." Rebecca clenched her jaw as tears threatened to surface. Just one fell, but that one tear held years of silence. She rose slowly and moved back to the side of Eleanor's bed. The old woman watched her with knowing eyes. "I don't know if I believe all this," Rebecca whispered, "but I'm tired of pretending that I'm okay." Eleanor smiled, just a breath of peace. No one believes all at once. Sometimes, faith starts with a single word. Rebecca sat beside her, heart heavy and open. She reached for the Bible again, staring at the page like it held a map to somewhere she didn't know she needed to go. And in the quiet, she let the truth come, not spoken, not sung, just breathed. "Lord, if there's anything left for me, show me, because my heart can't carry this alone anymore." And that was the moment Eleanor lifted her eyes once more, turned them toward heaven, and began to whisper a psalm that Rebecca had never heard before. But somehow, every word felt written just for her. Eleanor's voice wasn't strong, but it didn't need to be. It came slow, measured, full of gravity. Each word dropped like a stone in the silence, not rehearsed, not memorized, but breathed like she was delivering something she had waited years to release. "Show me a sign of your favor, Lord," she whispered, her eyes gazing upward as if reading from the ceiling, "so that those who hate me may see it and be put to shame for you. Lord, have helped me and comforted me." Rebecca froze. Every syllable landed like it had been hand-stitched for her life. She had never heard that verse before. It wasn't one of the ones you see on greeting cards or stitched on throw pillows. It wasn't sweet, it was sacred, raw, human. It didn't ask for riches, it didn't ask for peace. It asked for a sign, just a sign, a flicker of favor in the middle of the storm. And that word again, favor, the same word glowing on the page, the same one lit by a lamp that shouldn't have worked. The same word Eleanor had spoken now, as though Rebecca had been called by name to hear it. "What psalm is that?" Rebecca asked, her voice quiet, her hands wrapped tightly around Eleanor's. The woman's lips curled into the softest smile. 86 verse 17. "It's been in my Bible since the day I lost my husband. I asked God to show me I wasn't alone, and He gave me this." Rebecca turned the page slowly, searching for the number with trembling fingers. There it was, Psalm 86-17. She stared at it like it was a letter sent from someone who had been watching her life unfold from behind the veil. She read it aloud. "Show me a sign of your favor, Lord, so that those who hate me may see it and be put to shame, for you, Lord, have helped me and comforted me." The words settled into the room like a warm wind after a long winter. No flashing lights, no miracle, just quiet, holy quiet. It was the kind of quiet that didn't crush her. It held her. Rebecca closed her eyes, letting the words sink into places she didn't even know were dry. This wasn't just about Eleanor anymore. This was a sacred chain, being passed down, a kind of verse that wasn't meant to be kept, it was meant to be carried. And so she prayed, not with elegance, not with performance, just with need. "Lord, if this word came from you, then take my heart now. I'm tired of holding everything. I don't know what to ask for, but I believe you see me. And if there is still favor left for someone like me, I accept it, even if I don't understand it, even if I can't feel it yet. Help me trust what I don't see. Comfort me where no one else can. And if you will, show this sign to someone else praying in silence tonight. Amen." She opened her eyes slowly, letting the weight of the prayer land. Eleanor's breathing was steady now, her face peaceful. There was no flash of glory, no voice from heaven, but there didn't need to be. The moment was full. Rebecca wiped away a single tear and spoke, not just into the room, but into the world. "If you're hearing this right now, and you need a sign to, repeat these words with me." She picked up the Bible and held it to her chest like a heartbeat. "Show me a sign of your favor, Lord, because I can't do this alone." She waited, no rush, no force, just an offering, and the silence that followed didn't ache. It felt like being wrapped in something invisible. Then Eleanor spoke again, suddenly, as if returning for one last task. "Write it down, Rebecca. Write that psalm. Somewhere no one can erase it, because one day, someone will find it, and they'll know it came from God." Rebecca nodded, too moved to speak. She didn't know where or how she would share it, but she knew this psalm wasn't just for her. It was an anchor, it was a torch, and she was being asked to carry it forward. But what she didn't yet know was that someone else had already left her a message, a letter, one she hadn't dared to open. And inside it was a memory she had long buried. When her shift ended, Rebecca didn't take the elevator. She needed to move slowly, needed the stairs, needed silence. The hospital was winding down. A few nurses whispered at their stations. The sun was rising without fanfare, casting soft streaks of grey across the parking lot. The world outside hadn't changed, but something inside her had not joy, not peace, but something like being noticed. It was as if God had passed through that hospital room and left a fingerprint on her heart. She got home just before 7 a.m., kicked off her shoes by the door, didn't turn on any lights. She walked past the living room, through the hallway, straight to her mother's bedroom. The older woman lay still beneath the covers, eyes closed, breath shallow, body fading a little more each day. Rebecca gently pulled the blanket higher on her chest and whispered, "Mom, today I saw something. I think God answered." She sat on the hallway floor, let her back fall against the wall. The light through the blinds stretched across the carpet, reaching toward the bookshelf where years of forgotten things had gathered, old greeting cards, and a small wooden box. That box hadn't been touched in a long time. She pulled it down and opened it. Inside, memories, faded photos, torn letters, pieces of life before everything began to fall apart. And then, an envelope, white, slightly yellowed. Her name on the front in gentle cursive, Rebecca. She knew that handwriting. Even after the disease had taken her, mother's voice and mind, Rebecca would never forget that handwriting. With shaking fingers, she opened it. One sheet of paper, folded neatly. The words were few, but they weighed more than anything she had carried in months. "My daughter, if you find this letter, it means my mind can no longer hold on. But before I forget completely, I need you to know something. You are my sign of favor. From the moment I held you, I knew God had heard me. I pray every day that, even when I can no longer say your name, He will never forget yours. I love you, Mum." Rebecca read it once, then again. By the third time, the tears came slow, uncontrollable, deep. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that. Not encouragement, not instructions, just love, just to be seen. Everything made sense now. The light in the hospital room, the psalm Eleanor recited, the Bible opened to that exact verse. And now this letter from the one person Rebecca had cared for in silence and sacrifice, never expecting anything in return. She stood, still holding the paper, and walked to the shelf. There it was, her mother's old Bible. She hadn't touched it in months. She opened it without thinking, letting it fall where it would. The page stopped in the Psalms, and there it was again. Psalm 8:6, and next to verse 17. In the same handwriting, "This is the promise over our home?" Rebecca gasped. Her knees went weak. She sat on the carpet, clutching the Bible to her chest like an anchor. This wasn't just Eleanor's psalm. It wasn't just for the hospital. It was for her. It had been for her all along. It had been living in the bookshelves of her own house, waiting. A memory swept through her like wind. Her mother years ago, kneeling beside the bed with the same Bible, reading a psalm aloud while Rebecca battled a high fever, holding her forehead, whispering, "You're going to be okay. God's favor is on you." Rebecca let the tears come. No resistance, no shame. It was grief, and it was healing, mixed in a sacred silence only God can create. She got up slowly, gathered the Bible and the letter, and placed them in her bag. Her hands moved with care, like she was packing holy objects. And as she slipped on her shoes, her phone buzzed. A message from the hospital reception. "Rebecca, please return tonight. Mrs. Eleanor asked for you by name." Rebecca stared at the screen, but Eleanor was under palliative care. She wasn't supposed to be conscious anymore. Rebecca typed quickly, "Is she awake?" The reply came seconds later. She only said, "Call the girl who saw the light." She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her bag and keys and ran to the car. Not because she was afraid, because she knew this wasn't just a patient's request. It was a divine appointment, and what was waiting for her that night was more than a goodbye. It was a final word, and one that would change everything. Rebecca arrived at the hospital just before nightfall. The halls were dim, nurses moved like whispers, and the air felt thicker than usual. Room 214 was at the end of the corridor, quiet as always. But tonight, she felt like she was walking toward something sacred, like a promise was waiting behind that door. She opened it slowly. Darkness, but the lamp was still on. That same soft golden light cast its glow over the Bible on the side table, open, untouched, exactly where she had left it. Rebecca stepped inside. Without a word, Mrs. Eleanor lay still. her chest rising gently. Her eyes were open but faint, distant but aware. Her presence was quieter now, like a candle flickering in its final hours. Rebecca sat beside her bed and took her hand. She didn't need to speak. The silence between them was full of then words, deeper than comfort. After a few moments, Eleanor whispered, "Did you write it down?" Rebecca nodded. She reached into her bag and showed her the note from her mother's Bible. The page marked, the verse underlined, Psalm 86-17. Eleanor smiled. "Then now," she breathed, "you can carry it to the ones still in the dark." Rebecca felt her throat tighten. It wasn't a burden Eleanor was passing, it was a commission, a sacred handoff. "I don't understand why this is happening to me," Rebecca said quietly. "I'm nobody." Eleanor's grip tightened just enough. "None of us are anybody," she said, "until God decides to use us to bring light." Rebecca turned to look at the lamp. It was glowing steady but unplugged. She stood slowly, walked to the table, and bent down to confirm it. The cord dangled loose, not touching the wall outlet. No power, but the bulb. Alive, it made her stomach twist. Not in fear, in awe, she returned to Eleanor's side. "What is that?" she asked aloud. Eleanor didn't hesitate. "It's favor. It's here. Because you asked." Rebecca let the tears come. This time, she didn't fight them. They fell like rain over dry ground, over weeks and years of silence and exhaustion. She laid her head gently on the bed beside Eleanor's hand and let herself be still. For once, she didn't need to fix anything. She was just allowed to feel. Eleanor spoke again, her voice no louder than breath. "Promise me, you'll show this to the ones still searching." Rebecca lifted her head, her voice shaking. "I promise." Eleanor's eyes closed, and they didn't open again. For a long moment, it felt like time stopped. The monitor stayed steady. Then it changed. A flat tone, a soft alarm. Rebecca turned and looked at the time on the monitor. 3:14 a.m., the same time the lamp had first turned on. The same moment the Bible first glowed with favor. She sat there, unmoving, until the nurses came in. No sobs, no panic, just stillness. She reached out, placed her hand over Eleanor's heart, and whispered, "Thank you for showing me how to shine, even in silence." Before leaving, she turned to the table once more. The Bible remained open, the verse still visible, the word favor still lit. She closed the book gently and slipped it into her bag. Then, without a second thought, she turned off the overhead light. But the lamp stayed on at the front desk. The night nurse handed her something. "She left this for you," the nurse said. "Told us to give it to the girl who saw the light." It was a plain envelope. Rebecca took it, held it close to her chest, and walked away. She didn't open it. Not yet. She felt it wasn't the right time. This wasn't just a goodbye. This was something unfinished. And inside that envelope was the final piece of a story she didn't even know she was part of. Rebecca didn't open the envelope that night. She brought it home, placed it beside her mother's Bible, and just stared at both. Not like they were objects, like they were relics. She didn't need answers, not yet. She needed to sit with the silence. Let the mystery settle around her like incense. She fell asleep holding the Bible against her chest, the envelope tucked in her hands. It felt like she was cradling something that could still change everything. In the morning, she moved through the house with unusual calm. She made tea, sat with her mother, brushed her hair, laid a blanket over her knees. Then she returned to the living room and sat by the light. And finally, she opened it. Inside was a single folded page. No signature, no handwriting she recognized. Just plain paper and a message typed with care. "Rebecca, if you're reading this, then the light found you. I saw it 40 years ago when I lost everything. And I asked God to let someone see it. Again, not for me, but for someone else. You are that someone. You are the answer to a prayer I whispered when no one was listening. Keep the psalm, share it with those standing on the edge of giving up. Favor is not about earning, it's mercy. It's strength given to the brokenhearted. Now, you're part of the story. Pass it on." Rebecca read it twice, then again, and on the third time, she folded the paper slowly, wiped her eyes, and began to write. Not a text, not a post, a letter. To someone she didn't know. Someone sitting in a hospital waiting room, or crying in their car, or staring at the ceiling, asking God if he still noticed them. She wrote a single sentence, "Show me a sign of your favor." She printed it out, slipped it inside an envelope, and the next day left it on the windowsill of the hospital cafeteria. No name, no instructions. But on the back of the page, she wrote the full verse. Psalm 86-17. Show me a sign of your favor, Lord, so that those who hate me may see it and be put to shame for you. Lord, have helped me and comforted me. Days passed. A pregnant woman found the envelope. She was alone. Her baby was at risk. She was planning to leave the hospital and never come back. But when she read the verse, she sank to the floor and whispered, "This is for me." She took a picture and sent it to her church group. Someone posted it on social media. It went viral. And then the wave began. This verse saved me today. I'm waiting for biopsy results. And this showed up on my phone. I read this aloud over my son. He started breathing better. Rebecca never claimed credit, never commented, but she watched quietly as the psalm she once heard in the dark began to light up places she would never reach, and she whispered over and over, "Favor." The lamp in room 214 was eventually removed for inspection. The new staff said it had a faulty switch. The bulb had never been properly installed, but no one could explain why it had stayed on. Even with no power. They replaced it, put in a newer model. But some nights the nurses said they still saw a strange glow, and almost always there was a Bible left open on the table. Psalm 86, page worn at the corners, verse underlined. Years passed. Rebecca stayed by her mother's side. Her brother came back home and started healing. She changed hospitals, began mentoring young caregivers. She never talked about what happened, not in full, but she began writing articles, short pieces, on resilience, on spiritual burnout, on hidden grief. Then one day, she was invited to speak at a hospice care conference. In her final words on stage, she looked into the crowd and said, "Sometimes, the greatest miracle is not healing, it's knowing you're still seen. And if you're waiting for a sign, Psalm 86-17 might be waiting for you too." People stood, applauded, some cried. One woman approached her afterward. She was young, pale, holding something in her hand. "I found this in the hospital lounge," she said. "There was no name, just this verse. It changed everything for me." Rebecca took the envelope gently, flipped it over, and read the same handwritten sentence she had once left behind. "Show me a sign of your favor." She smiled, didn't explain, didn't need to. She just whispered, "Keep passing it forward." She walked down the hallway, heart full, a quiet joy rising from somewhere unshakable. Because now she understood, when one person asks, God begins something, and when another person answers, God continues it. If this story touched you, write the name of someone you love in the comments, leave a word of faith, or share this video with someone who needs a sign tonight, because maybe, just maybe, the favor is finding them now.